Hi, my name is Tom and I'm an alcoholic. In November 2020, I was asked to lead an Alcoholics Anonymous men's STEP discussion meeting. The format of the meeting is for the leader to share their experience with one step in depth per week using the 12 and 12 book as a guide. I recorded my portion of the meeting to share with sponsees and others who could not attend the meeting. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and I hope that my message of recovery resonates with you. I'm Tom. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for everyone showing up tonight. We're on step 4, and I was really excited about step 4, which is a very strange thing to say as I'm reading through the 12 and 12 and thinking about how what to talk about here. So let me do a little bit of lead in. Tom, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm an addict, and a lot of other isms, 12-step things going on, Al-Anon and ACOA, and throw me in a obsessive compulsive situation, and I'd fit right in. I'm in AA as a result of not being able to drink successfully anymore. It didn't last long for me. The success part, the recovery part, thankfully, has lasted me quite a while. But the results of doing the work has gotten me to where I am today, and that's why I'm in AA. Even though I've dabbled in a bunch of other 12-step recovery spiritual programs. So step 4, I'll do the summary at the front of the book first, and then get into it a little bit. Excuse me. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. How instincts can exceed their proper function. Step 4 is an effort to discover our liabilities. Basic problem of extremes in instinctive drives. Misguided moral inventory can result in guilt, grandiosity, or blaming others. Assets can be noted with liabilities. Self-justification is dangerous. Willingness to take inventory brings light and new confidence. Step 4 is beginning of lifetime practice. Common symptoms of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression. Inventory reviews relationship. Importance of thoroughness. So those are the bullet points at the beginning of the book. So if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, why should I be excited about a step 4? Or more importantly, why in the hell should I do a moral and searching inventory? Well, here's the problem. For me, I'm an alcoholic, and I've made a decision in step 3 to turn my will and my life over to the care of a power greater than myself, right? And that logical next step is, well, if I'm turning my will and my life over to this process, this group, this power greater than myself, well, I should be doing something about it. If I've joined a 12-step program, perhaps I should do the 12 steps. And this is really the first action step that I'm being asked to do some work. But the concept of inventory seemed really scary and hard. And can I just hang out here in steps 3.5, right? Can I just linger here for a bit, maybe as long as I can possibly bear it before I move on to 4. Well, the problem is in step 2, I came to believe that I could be restored to sanity and have that obsession compulsion removed, that I don't need to fall back into active alcoholism or addiction again. But maybe I failed in step 2. Maybe step 2, I'm not believing as much anymore. Or maybe I don't think I need to be restored to sanity. Maybe I'm sliding backwards. And which leads me to, well, maybe my problem is step 1, where maybe I think that maybe I'm not powerless over drink at this point. I could stay sober on 1, 2, 3 for a bit, and maybe maybe I've got the power back, and or maybe I think that I'm not no longer unmanageable. Maybe I thought that my drink made me unmanageable, and I'm not drinking, so I got this covered. I've got this handled. that's the risk of not doing step four is I can slide backwards into step one and perhaps even back to drinking again as a result. And this is not a theoretical step. It's not a theoretical, process. This is an actual process. I have to put pen to paper. I have to do some work now. And I've learned my own experience is that working the steps in theory, meaning I look at the steps on the board, I read through them, and they're great in theory, and they're great as a kind of a mental exercise. Um, if I don't do the work, then perhaps I'm going to have some problems, reaching my goal, which is relief from alcoholism, permanent sobriety, and a spiritual awakening. So for me, I did hang out in that 3.5 step for a while. Yeah, I had almost 5 years in the program, and I was suicidal because I did not understand that I had such deep emotional, spiritual issues, and that those could be resolved, assisted, guided to get some help, a resolution, some recovery by working the steps. That specter of the what that's going to look like when I, peel off the layer and peer into what makes Tom tick, or some of the resentments I have, or whatever it might be. That that pain that I would experience, and the fear that I had around it kept me from doing the work for a while, to my own detriment, to a thinking that I didn't want to drink again, but certainly all the other options were looking good to me. Luckily, I didn't drink, and I didn't do anything about those ideations. I got some help, some additional help, and I got to work in the steps. And that's a cautionary tale. Don't do what I did. If you want to, you know, experience that suffering, you're welcome to it. I already did it for you. I'm going to suggest you kind of power through this thing and get to working on an inventory. Because for me, I'll go with the big book here. It says alcohol is but a symptom, right? I didn't know that. I wasn't, aware. I thought it was just screwed up. I thought, maybe I had some mommy daddy issues. Maybe, maybe I had some character defects. But just by staying sober and sticking around the program, that would all get resolved. And I'm not that type of alcoholic. I couldn't pull it off. So I found out that, yep, you need to work the fourth step. And, again, I'll just stick in the big book for a minute and then get into the 12 and 12. But, Bill nails it. He talks about, being stuck in self. And when we talk about step 3 and what that gets me, the pain it causes in my life, the relationships it puts me in conflict with. And then he goes into 4, and he's talking about resentments and how dangerous resentments are for an alcoholic, how they're grave and fatal, and he puts it in all that context. So, I won't get into how to do a fourth step in terms of, format and guides, and there's plenty of resources out there, worksheets and books, and there's even an app for that. There's a fourth step app, which if I could just punch a few buttons and have an algorithm spit out what my character defects are, what my inventory is, and all that. Maybe I would have been better off doing that. But I put pen to paper. The one thing I will say about the formats is I've done a few different ones over the years. My first one, I actually did I've heard it called the Hazleton fourth step, a California fourth step. It's about 300 questions, individual questions, that talk about the 3 stages of our lives: childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, and goes into every topic. And I wouldn't start anybody off on that format. I think the big book columns is very effective and very focused. at that point I was a little bit further into, my therapeutic process to be able to handle that. Otherwise, it's very great for, very good for getting into in depth and peeling back onion layers of where I have problems with relationships and money and sexual identity and truth. It's one of those other things that came up in my inventory. I've got a truthfulness problem. So when we look at what they're asking us to do here is a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. I think that the beauty of this program and the beauty of how the steps work is that I'm only asked to deliver what I have capacity for at the moment, right? The fourth step I did then versus the fourth step I did when I had 10 years, the one I did at 20 years, they're all different. You're right. I would even say if you could produce a very shallow and tentative inventory versus a searching and fearless more inventory, it's better than no inventory. If I can get out like just through the topsoil in my first inventory, that gets me one step closer to a spiritual awakening, one step closer to to being able to stay sober long enough to do the next fourth step next time around. It's what's my capacity in that moment to produce some honest work and whatever my level of honesty is to deal with. And then the other piece of that is I had a problem with moral. It's certainly like it's not like I had morals or I had a good moral compass or not like I had a certainly a guidepost pointing me to the right direction on a lot of the instincts that I had. But it's seemed very daunting that I was going to be judged. When really it was only myself who was going to do the judging in the fourth step, and I was the one who needed to produce it. So I need to at least get going on some definitions of what's good and what's bad, in terms of moral. The truth was, I heard some people talk about, what the difference is between a moral inventory and sin, and some decent talks over the years that helped me with that, and and I heard somebody say, it's like, well, just look at it this way. Like, instead of thinking about myself or my behavior or as good or bad, just think about it blocked and unblocked, right? That, part of this process of working the steps is I'm trying to achieve, a spiritual awakening. I'm trying to uncover who the natural, true spirit of my, Tom is, and get to a point of being unblocked from access to my higher power and to have a honest relationship in the moment with you guys, and so so it's not about like, okay, what's good and bad about Tom. It's about what's blocking and my relationship with you, and what's getting in the way of trusting in a higher power, and what are the, or more importantly, what are the characteristics which can lead me to having these things unblocked, and what kind of truth and true nature can I reach by doing this inventory? What I want to do is find out what makes me tick, so I can figure out what's good and bad. Like the inventory talks about, like a business takes stock. So can I see what's in there and at least get an honest assessment? And I'll talk about fifth step in terms of getting help with an honest assessment, because, like I said, I had an honesty problem to start with. Once I set aside, how searching can I actually be, and how moral do I have to be, I got to the point of looking at these behaviors, right? And this is where the 12 and 12 in the fourth step really just light up in terms of talking about instincts and what those instincts are, and how we're all born with a certain set of instincts, and then we build off of that as we grow older, and our experiences either help to improve or degrade or make worse these instincts. So in the book he talks about we they're necessary for our existence, but a lot of times far exceed their proper functions. And that would be fine if I'm not an alcoholic. There are plenty of people in this world who have these natural instincts in one form or another, are have them out of whack, right, and have dominant traits, and sometimes are harmful to others as a result, and that's fine for them. It is not fine for me as an alcoholic. My instincts out of whack cause me to harm myself and harm others. And that cycle of acting out on these instincts, causing harm, feeling guilt and shame and remorse over them, wanting to run from those feelings, because that was a primary activator of my alcoholism, was running from the feelings. I can't keep going through that cycle sober. I have got no other way to escape that stuff unless I go back to drinking. So I need to look at these instincts and find a balance with them. And that comes in 6 and 7 and later on with some other work. But at the very least, I need to get them down on paper. You know, what I read a book recently. It's called *Sapiens*. It's about the history of the human beings, and it talks about how we went from essentially Neanderthals and hunter gatherers and then farmers and all long history. And what I found interesting was we were perhaps happiest when we were hunter gatherers, because we had very little possessions. We had, we were able to roam around. There wasn't, we didn't have to defend against as much. We went wherever the food was, things along those lines. Wasn't the politics involved. There wasn't this identity, this buildup of ego, based on what I was, what clothes I wear, how big my house is, did I get that promotion? And I really identify with that, and that falls right into the step 4. Like my ego and my instincts, they just want to pile on those feelings that are generated by it, make me uncomfortable, make me separate from you, create this conflict, which then I'm either, even if I'm not drinking, I'm acting out in ways which, look like anger, possessiveness, jealousy, all of these, behaviors and feelings which put me out of balance. And it's the putting me out of balance which is the problem. So he uses the terms, which again, I love Bill's writing. He calls it a soul sickness, right? He talks about that we've lost all perspective, that, if we go into looking at our inventory, that we can become depressive, right? This is one side of it. So if I look at it, if I'm prone to self-loathing, self-hatred, I'll raise my hand on that one. I can go down this path and do the inventory incorrectly and make this a beat up on Tom session. That's where a good sponsor would come in and encourage me to, also do a asset inventory at the same time. He calls it pride in reverse, right? So that's one reason, both I would run away from a inventory. Once I get started, it scares the crap out of me, and I don't want to feel all that. But also, the other part of it is, and I could do this in, practically the same sentence or paragraph, is I could switch to, being over prideful and thinking I'm too good for this stuff, that really it's or it's the other people who cause these problems. Like, why should I do the inventory? We were right, they were wrong. I could find any justification to dance around this stuff and make these instinct conversations not really about just getting down to the facts. And, I've said it before in this session, these sessions, that humility is just, sowed through these steps and through the writing so much that this isn't about deflating the ego so much. It's not so much building up the depressive one so much. It's not so much, any of that, other than getting to some truth, right? The humility part of it, of let me just get something a little bit more accurate down in terms of what these character defects are, and how I'm affected by them, right? So where's the list? He uses this, the 7 deadly sins as an example. Reading through this again, I was surprised, as I usually am when I go back through the literature. I'm like, hey, this is cool. That the amount of kind of prompting and questions and probing that is in the 12 and 12 on step 4. Is pretty deep, right? In terms of, looking beyond the things like they had in the big book, in terms of resentments and fear and harms. It's asking me about these other instincts which get in the way, and he probes us with questions to get us to think about them. He uses on page 50, he talks about at the bottom. He talks about sex first, but I mean you could just use any of the character defects, any of the sins, whatever you want to call them, in this sentence. Like, when and how, and in what instances did my selfish pursuit of blank damage other people and me? What people were hurt? How badly did I spoil my marriage, injure my children? That doesn't have to be about sex for me. That could be about my anger. Right? Lashing out. Frightened the hell out of my kid when I yelled. That's something to think about and put down in my inventory. How did I react to these situations? Did I burn with guilt, or did I brush it off? On the next page, he talks about, other, what's that? Oh, financial and emotional insecurity, right? Again, just swap out the instincts for me, and this works. What character defects contributed to my financial instability? Well, fear, right? Overspending to compensate to my feelings of inadequacy, being ashamed that I don't know how to handle money and don't know how to ask for help. Spending to just not feel, right? Done that as well. The oblivion of shopping, or I could put in any other of those instincts: sex, video games, food. Did I try to cover up those feelings of inadequacy by bluffing, cheating, lying, or evading responsibility? Was I extravagant? Did I recklessly borrow, right? What about quick money deals? So this kind of prodding, this poking that Bill does here in the 12 and 12 along the 4th step in these areas, for me, again, makes me uncomfortable. Especially, when I go into a 4th step later on in my sobriety, right? The first 4th step, the second one, that's cool, man. That's all about my drinking days. That's all about, stuff I did early on, before I found this program. For me, doing a 4th step at 20 years sober and still coming up with these, these instincts gone awry, that's painful, right? But I got to look at this, and it says, things like permanent sobriety, right? Peace of mind. So what's more important, being uncomfortable looking at these things for myself, or the ease and comfort, the spiritual awakening, the living happy, joyous, and free that I'm promised. And again, these are topics which you look at this and I go, what does this have to do with drinking? The fact is, I am acting out on these character defects, these instincts out of whack, these resentments, these fears. I'm acting out on them whether I know them or know it or not. These are things that are being played out in my relationships on a day-to-day basis. And if I don't do this work, I am prone to, again, the guilt and shame and remorse of acting out on it, which leads me to try to want to run from those feelings. And how do I run from those feelings? And I've got nowhere else to run to. I run back to the bottle. So the work here, as much as it's iterative, and I peel back more layers, and I get a little bit more serious about about my tolerance level for these instincts. And again, 6 and 7, we'll talk about the character defects in play, but until I write them down on paper and get a good view of what my relationship is to them, I'm not going to have the ability to share them with the other person in 5, look for relief in 6 and 7, make amends for them in 8 and 9. This is the real jumping off point for real recovery. At least it was in my point of view. And I want to leave time for everybody else. So I'm going to wrap that up by, other than saying that don't let the fear of a 4th step stop you from a 4th step. Even if you've done them before, I'm living proof that going through the work over and over again has produced more and more freedom and more relief from alcoholism, and more of a sense of where my place is in the universe, and my relationship with my higher power and the people in it. And it comes from doing the work. So thanks, everyone. Love to hear about your thoughts on the 4th step. Thanks.